Here's a little backstory before I begin. My family has never gotten along with my father's side of the family. Truthfully, I only know a handful of names from my father's side, and among those names, a few of them I actually will willingly say I like. The reason for this is because my grandfather was a pedophile. His name was Richard, but I've always referred to him as Dick when talking among people who knows what he's done. That side of the family not only encouraged his behavior, but offered their younger children to keep him happy. 3 of my cousins were raped and molested, with their parents' consent over 10 years. My grandmother, his wife, then got courageous and tried to court send me and my sister. My grandfather came to stay with us for a little while during the Thanksgiving holiday. Audrey, my sister, was 6 while I was 3. He tried to lure us into rooms with just him, me, and my sister, with games like hide and go seek or tag. Of course, we didn't understand what he was trying to do. We just thought he was being funny, until he started touching us. Things got very confusing, but he kept telling us it was a game. Every day he would touch us in dirtier places, and he would get very excited. One time he tried to get us to take our clothes off, but we didn't understand and ended up not wanting to play anymore. Of course, no one suspected much since we told everyone it was just a game. But my mom was starting to suspect something was off. Thank God for her. I'm scared to think what could have happened if she hadn't noticed. My mom herself was raped by a family member, and after watching my grandfather interact with us, starting to recognize what he was doing, it was exactly what her uncle would try to trick her into doing so he could rape her. In fact, we can't play Monopoly anymore, simply because whenever she got raped, her uncle would call it playing Monopoly. After she did some watching, she started to see that he was hiding us in rooms with just us and him. One day, she caught him touching my sister and trying to touch himself. My mom immediately called the police and they immediately went into action. After an investigation, they found our claims of sexual abuse to little girls in the family was true. But nobody on my father's side of the family would stand witness against him. All of them denied or tried to protect him. Not one mother thought what he did to their little girls was wrong, and they denied any sexual activity in court, which saved him quite a bit. The courts couldn't do anything about any other girls in my family, since they all denied sexual activity and had no proof. But we knew. Everyone knew when the trial was over, but by the time they told everyone, it was too late to bring the case back up in court. It was up to me and my sister, who were only almost raped. He was charged as a sexual offender on his record and sentenced 15 years in jail. Me and my sister's case only got him 15 years, but it didn't matter anyways. He was let out in 5 for good behavior. Ever since then, every other Christmas or so, my father would make us go up there to celebrate Christmas with the family. My mom, sister, and I never wanted to go up there, but my father insisted that we try to understand that there was still his family. So every other Christmas since my grandfather was let out of jail, me and my sister would go up there and have to side hug him and pretend to smile. All the while, we had to wear large uncomfortable clothing and could never sit closer than 10 feet of him. Every night, me and Audrey would stay half awake the whole time. When someone would get up to get a glass of water, my sister would grab my hand tightly and look to see who it was. Both of us was terrified it was him. But my entire family slept together. My mom was always next to us, so we wouldn't feel so scared. It didn't help much. Nothing ever happened on those days, but I never once felt comfortable there. Me and my sister have never talked about it, and we don't plan to. Fast forward to when I'm 19, it's been years since I've been up to that property where my father's side of the family lived. All of the girls still live there, and all of them still act like he never did a damn thing wrong. When I turned 18, my parents gave me the choice as to what my relationship with that side of the family would be. Like my sister, I cut them out as much as I could, but my grandmother has passed due to cancer, and Richard, aka Dick, has just followed behind. I didn't go to the funeral, but I felt bad enough for my father to take what the bastard left me. "Please don't let his mistakes leave you estranged from your heritage," my father had said to me. And he was right. My grandparents, as disgusting of people they were, they had things from 300 years ago that had remained in the family for a while, some of which had to be handed down to me, my brother, and my sister. I inherited 3 guns, a piano, some old valuable jewelry, and that last thing was a doll. The doll was old looking, but a collectible from the 20s. It was still in its little cardboard box with a slightly yellowed paper that gave its credentials. The paper included its age, what materials were used, her backstory, and her name. I overlooked it with a grossed out glance and simply tried to find a place to hide it. The doll disturbed me from the very beginning, simply because how very similar it looked to me. Brown hair, rounded face, small red lips, and even the eyes were like mine, blue with green flecks in the middle. It could have been a coincidence, but the doll creeped me out coming from that bastard anyways. I received my inheritance 2 months ago. Right now I'm living just outside a bigger city in Montana with my boyfriend Ben. We live in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath condo. It's comfortable, but a lot bigger since we just recently kicked out our roommate for losing his job and mooching off us for a few months. It's not a problem. We can both afford to rent ourselves, but it was nice having some extra money for a while. My boyfriend works in a logging company, while I'm getting my degree in nursing and working an internship at a nearby hospital. I tried not to let Richard's death affect my life too much, so I only missed 2 days to pick up what was left for me and get it back to my condo. All of that bastard's things were put in the guest bedroom where our roommate lived. The piano, the guns, and the doll. The doll I made sure I hid carefully. Truthfully, I didn't like knowing it was in my home, let alone seeing it, so I put it at the top shelf of the closet in the room, behind all of the blankets and some extra clothes. I had pushed Richard's death to the back of my mind. Ben and I went back to our normal lives of working in school, but it wasn't until a few nights ago strange things started happening around my house. First it was small, things moving in the guest bedroom, clothes being thrown out, blankets all over the floor. Things in my bedroom started going missing. My pillow, a nightgown, even some lingerie was found in the guest bedroom. Ben played it off at first. He said, "Look, we're both busy. We might have moved it without remembering we did." But after my lingerie was found in the guest room, he wondered if our roommate was maybe sneaking in or something. In his anger, we never got back our key to our place, so it wasn't unimaginable. Our roommate was a pretty avid pervert, but nothing like Richard was. But something told me otherwise. Lately, while Ben was at work, I would feel like I was being watched, and something like my back was being brushed by something. I had nothing to blame either. Me and Ben only have our cats, who always hang around outside during the day. Lately, the cat doesn't even like to come indoors anymore. Sometimes at night now, when I'm sleeping, I feel small cold hands on my legs. I can hear something walking around. I'm always too scared to investigate, and I just try to go back to sleep. But I could have swore a few nights ago, I felt something brushing my hair, and when I turned around, thinking it was Ben, not only was nothing there, but I swear I saw a small doll, like a girl standing in my doorway, before it walked away. I checked the doll the next morning, but it was where I had put it months ago, still in its box. Something very weird happened last night that disturbs me and made me want to vomit horribly today. I was home alone, waiting for Ben to come home in the next couple of hours. I was doing dishes when out of the blue, I felt small cold hands square on my back and push me from behind so hard that I fell forward into the sink. I had broke a glass where a huge chunk of it sliced into my hand and was embedded into my palm. I quickly spun around and only heard small quick footsteps leading away, down the hallway into the bedrooms. Grabbing a nearby towel, I wrapped my hand gently to stop the blood. I needed to know what the hell was touching me lately, so I followed the footsteps. But right before I was to enter the hallways, I heard a door slam. Looking down my hallway, all 3 doors were closed. I opened the first bedroom, my bedroom, but nothing was askew. The next bedroom was full of storage, and the door was still locked. I felt cold and got chills up and down my arms as I was left with the guest bedroom. I reached for the knob and slowly turned it, expecting something awful. I was tempted to leave it closed and dial 911, but curiosity got the best of me. Pushing open the door, the room seemed normal. The piano, the gun safe, and a small twin bed were all where I'd left them. The only thing off was the closet door was slightly opened. Before opening the door, I ran back into the kitchen and grabbed a knife before going into a trap. I was afraid maybe it was an intruder or maybe our lazy roommate sneaking in like Ben thought. Either way, I wasn't going in without protection. Thinking now, I should have grabbed one of the guns, but I guess I wasn't thinking straight. The door swung open and inside, the paint was peeling off. That was weird since our place was so new. All of the paint was very fresh, and there's no way it could be peeling off, especially since nowhere else in the apartment was this happening. Plus, how did I not notice that a few weeks ago? The first thing that caught my eye was a small red string poking through the blankets. Without thinking, I grabbed it and pulled, and on the other end, my hand throbbing from the glass. It was difficult to pull, it being a simple red yarn, but I wrapped it around my good hand and slowly pulled it out. Then, attached halfway through the string was a picture. The string was attached through a hole on the top of the picture and swung side to side on the taut string as I stared it down with disbelief. It was a picture of me, Audrey, and my brother Marcus, all huddled before Richard. Matt stood in the middle while me and Audrey had Richard's arms wrapped around us from behind. His hands where our breasts would grow in when we got older. The urge to vomit was strong. I clearly remember my mom showing me that picture as she was making a picture book of me and my siblings when we were all young. I remember her turning green looking at it and throwing it away. I was probably 13 or 14 when this happened, so I have no idea how it got there. Was it a copy? That was the only way it made sense in my mind. I noticed the string continued and I pulled again. I started to see brown curly hair poking through the blankets and I pulled harder. It was the doll, of course, and in her hands was Richard's glasses that I remember seeing on him in that picture. I have no idea how they got here, or if maybe I overlooked them, but right now I feel so unsafe. My mind is going a million hours a minute and I have no idea what to do. I put the doll and the picture back into the box, but I have no idea what to do or what to tell Ben. Really, I've kept a lot of this from him, so he doesn't think I'm crazy, and I don't know what to do. Please help me. After reading everyone's comments, I've decided to take action. The past few nights have been a living hell, and I'm starting to think that even God can't help me. But I need to explain what happened. After I posted my first story, things got scary fast. I locked up the doll with the glasses and a string in the gun safe. As for the photos and glasses, I burnt the photo and I tossed the glasses in a dumpster out the back. That night was fairly normal for me after that. Ben came home and we had a regular night. Watched TV, had spaghetti for dinner, and then I was off to my night shift at the hospital. Most of the night, I let myself fall into the flow of my busy schedule and forgot about the doll incident. Filing papers, wiping old people's asses, filling out charts. It was the usual night for a hospital internship. It wasn't until around 2 that morning things started to get weird. One of my patients, Mr. O'Reilly, who I called Joe, passed away in his sleep. The little alarm on my pager buzzed against my hip, and I ran to his room to find 2 of the floor nurses and the doctor declaring him dead on a DNR do not resuscitate order. I was sad, because I was hoping he hadn't filled out that form, but he must have done it on my day off. After we tagged him, it was time to put him downstairs in a temporary morgue. Normally, we would call the family in to say goodbye, but most of his had never bothered to shown. He was a lone wolf. Maybe that's why I liked him so much. I was wheeling his body down to the lower levels of the hospital when I started to feel my pager buzz. I checked it and there was no response. I blamed it on that weird phenomena when you feel your phone go off even when it hasn't. I do that so many times, especially since I've become a nurse. I got to the lower level floor when I felt it again. Again, it was nothing. I approached the big metal doors leading to basically the hospital freezer and pushed it open with my butt, waiting for the cold air to sweep over me, only it never did. I looked back, confused when I saw a doctor standing there, examining a body in the back of the room. The morgues don't look like they do in the movies. No metal cabinets to slide the bodies in, only rows of dead on their beds, wrapped in body bags being chilled. They sit in little rows against the wall until the body chills enough to be moved and prepared for a funeral. So the doctor was examining one of the bodies, checking the internal temperature and filling out some paperwork. I carefully lined up Joe with the others before commenting, "Kind of warm in here, isn't it?" The doctor chuckled. "I guess someone's going to hell tonight." He laughed hard at this joke. It seemed a little too dark for my taste, so I laughed out of respect for his status. "Who you got there?" "Just an old patient of mine. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. Basically the most painful way to die of cancer." "I see. Doing some paperwork then?" "Nope." He cut me off sharply, but with a light tone. "Oh, well, I'll let you get to it then." "Have you found it yet?" He asked me without turning around. "Found it?" "The hairs. Have you found them yet?" I started to smell strong odor, like rotten eggs. Hairs from what?" He paused and looked over his shoulder, looking me up and down like he was sizing me up. What a creep. Doctors are always perverts to nurses, but it always made me so pissed off. "I'm guessing not then. Well, have a good night, Hannah." I gave a curt nod before walking out and jumping into the elevator. It took me a minute to process that he somehow knew my name. Maybe he'd seen me around the hospital. I didn't really recognize him though. I went home around 5 in the morning, ready to sleep until my 11 o'clock class. Taking off my dirty clothes, I crawled into the bed with an already sleeping Ben. I had completely forgotten about the doll at this point, so right as I was about to fall asleep, I heard glass. Something scratching on glass. I froze. Was it the gun safe? I chose to ignore it and try to sleep, but the distinct sounds of nails on glass got louder and louder in my ears. I hugged Ben tight, trying to wake him up. He sleepily rolled over and wrapped me in his arms, whispering softly, "What was that, baby?" "Hairs," he mumbled. I felt my blood run ice cold. "Hairs? What about hairs, baby?" He hugged me tighter than usual then, almost to the point it hurt, like he was trying to constrain me. "You're mine." He rolled over on top of me and held my arms tight enough that they started to feel numb. "I'm not letting you go anywhere, Hannah. I'll take you with me." His voice sounded growly suddenly, and that smell of rotten eggs slapped me in the face. His eyes were wide, like he hadn't been sleeping a few seconds before. His teeth were bared then, a strange smile on his face unlike himself. "Ben, stop, baby. You're hurting me." He growled through his teeth in response. A wave of fear overtook me. What is going on? Small gray hairs fell from his head onto my face, much like an old man's, falling out of his head like he was shedding. He then said, "The rose is red for innocence." I recognized that line. It was a line Richard always told me when me and Adrian would visit. Every Christmas we went off to that bastard's house. He gave me and my sister a single red rose, as if that would straighten out what he tried to do when we were kids. I pushed Ben off screaming and crying, trying to get away from him. I fell off the bed and crawling on my butt towards the door, my eyes never leaving him. Ben crouched like an animal on the bed. His eyes has a hue like a cat's would in the dark. That weird green sheen. We stared at each other for what felt like an hour, but was probably only 5 minutes. A weird smile crossed his face, a smile that reminded me so crisply of Richard's. We stayed frozen like that, neither moving towards or away from each other, like cat and mouse, one waiting for the other to move. After a little bit, he laid down like he was going to sleep, his back facing me. A few minutes later, I heard Ben's familiar snore. After sitting there frozen for half an hour or so, I carefully inched my way back to the bed, afraid he was going to wake up and launch himself at me with the prowess of a lion. I peeled back the blankets, and all over Ben was a small layer of old gray-looking hairs, much like you would see on an old man. I shivered, grabbed my pillow, and slept on the couch that night. I still can't find that doctor who asked me about the hairs and what the hell he knew. But I'm starting to feel like Ben isn't Ben anymore. During the day, he acts mostly normal, except out of the corner of my eye, I see him stare at me. The same stare that I saw that night. I'm scared to sleep with him, and we haven't shared the same bed for the past couple of days. He hasn't said anything about it either, like he's waiting for me to give up and join him. And lately, he's been coming home from work early, but his boss called and was asking why he wasn't coming in. I think he's been pretending to go to work for a few days now. And now his hair is starting to gray around his temples, like he's aged 20 years in 2 days. I don't think my boyfriend is my boyfriend anymore. Random people I don't recognize have started to ask me about the hair, and it keeps showing up everywhere I go. On my clothes, in my bed, in my car. Last night, I took a shower, and when I brushed my hair, tons of little hairs fell out of my own. I don't know what this hair shit is or where it's coming from, but I can't get rid of it. It always comes back. I got so fed up that last night I decided to burn the doll. I came home from class and stormed down the hall, flinging open the door with the key to the safe in my hands. When I got to the gun safe to find that ugly little doll hidden under the cleaning supplies, it was gone. Only a little snowy layer of gray hair sits on the bottom of the safe, and I have no idea where it is. I almost wonder if Ben found it and hid it from me. I don't know what to do, guys. I'm out of options. I think I might call Audrey, and I hope to God she believes me. I'll keep you informed on what happens next.
I swear up and down that this story, as much as it sounds like it's a made-up run-of-the-mill scary doll story, it is 100% true and still terrifies me. When I was a kid, I would spend a lot of time in Texas with my brother, dad and stepmom. Mainly just my brother and stepmom because my dad was in the military and he would frequently go on long trips, leaving us alone in whatever house we happened to be living in at the time. When I was about 5, we moved to a large, very old Victorian house. 3 stories, not including the attic and the basement. Lots of rooms, and as a little kid I found it very fun to explore this house. In the attic there was lots of old junk that the owner of the house was storing while we were renting it, including a huge collection of beautiful, handcrafted porcelain dolls. There were hundreds of them lined up neatly on the back wall in a glass case, standing on their stands like an army ready for command. And as a little girl who loved ribbons and bows and anything girly, I was entranced. One doll in particular stood out to me. A beautiful red-haired, green-eyed doll in a blue silk dress with a matching ribbon in her hair. I begged my dad to let me play with her. I felt the need to hold and love her and have tea parties with her. He of course refused, saying that the dolls were worth more than I could imagine, and he wanted his deposit back when we moved. He kept the door locked for good measure after catching me more than once staring in awe at the doll. A month went by and I had all but forgotten about the doll, choosing to simply explore the house and play in my basement room with my Barbies. Until one day when I came home from dropping my dad off at the base, and found the red-haired doll sitting on my bed. I was ecstatic, thinking that my dad had given me the doll and left it as a surprise. I proceeded to play with the doll every second of every day until my dad came home. As soon as my dad saw the doll, he flipped out and yelled at me, spanked me and took the doll away to lock back up in the attic, and only got more aggravated when he discovered that the attic door was still locked and he was the only one to have a key. He couldn't figure out how I could have possibly picked the lock and then repicked it to lock it. His solution was I had somehow convinced my brother to do it for me. Another month went by and my dad installed another lock on the attic, warning me and my brother what would happen if he found out we'd been in the attic again while he was gone. That very night, when we returned home, the doll sat on my bed again, leaving me wary of its presence. Something that had once made me so happy now made me cautious and anxious. I told my stepmom, who immediately became angry and slapped me, then my brother, and tried to return the doll, only to find the attic door once again locked. She tore the house apart trying to find the keys. She was positive we had hidden them, until giving up and locking the doll in her room. That night my dad came home. I was terrified, and he wouldn't speak to me or my brother at all, only giving a short speech about how we needed to go to our rooms and not come out. The next trip he made, we didn't see him off to the base. We sat in our rooms and had a quiet evening alone. I spent that night sulking and trying to figure out how the doll had gotten into my room. Later, after I'd fallen asleep, I heard soft music box music that slowly woke me up. I felt something near my feet, and thinking it was my cat curled up, I reached down only to, instead of finding fur, a handful of hair. I turned my light on and screamed. What looked like every doll from the attic was in my room, sitting at my tea table, on my dollhouse, and positioned in standing positions on my bed and in various parts of my room. My door slammed open and my dad appeared in the doorway, where he had been apparently waiting for me to head to the attic to claim a doll. He took one look at them, grabbed me, and ran out of the house, dragging my brother and stepmom along with us. He refuses to speak of the story to this day. The most important part of this story is the backstory of the red-haired doll. Apparently, the original builder and owner of the house had a daughter who died when she was about 8, and it was customary to make a doll of their likeness, made out of their real hair and dressed in the same clothes the child wore. I think it was that little girl, because I never felt like it was dangerous to play with the doll. I felt like she was lonely and trying to make a friend.